Hello there guys, Daniel Childs back here again. It's transfer deadline day and obviously I had to make a show today, but I'm sure as you know with transfer deadline day and as I've experienced since doing this show, transfer deadline day is one of the most awkward days for content creators because you don't want to go too soon. You're kind of waiting for most of the day to see if anything materializes because you don't want to go too early and then within an hour the news you've spoken about or the situation you've spoken about has developed or become irrelevant. But I do have to wake up early tomorrow, so I'm not going to be staying up till like 2 a.m. To wait for things to happen. So I'm going to go now, and anything that happens, and we'll react to it after. So luckily, just before starting to record, we got the news about Jadon Sancho, Chelsea appearing to have that deal very close to happening, and now it's going to be a race to get it over the line before deadline happens. So yeah, there's going to be a lot to delve into because it's not just about Sancho, it's not just about Victor Osimhen, it's not just about Chalobah and Sterling. It's also about the window as a whole because really I want to talk about that because has this window been a success for Chelsea Football Club? Has this summer been a success for Chelsea Football Club? And I want to ask everyone watching or listening to this one simple question, and it's a yes or no. Have Chelsea improved their squad? Now, I think that's kind of a basic thing for a transfer window. Maybe I've got it wrong nowadays, but to me, I always look at the transfer window as a chance for you to improve your squad, to improve what you have, to expand your options, not limit them, to maybe declutter your squad, to get rid of players you don't want anymore, don't have any use for, and to bring in ones you do have use for. Of course, that isn't always the case, and there are variations, there is nuance within that. But with a club with the finances of Chelsea, who have spent over $1 billion in recent years, I think it's pretty understandable and kind of reasonable to expect you walk into a transfer window and you try and improve your squad. So we'll go through whether Chelsea have actually answered that question positively or not. Let's start with Sancho. So Chelsea on the verge of agreeing a deal to sign Jadon Sancho for Man United. A loan, an initial loan, but apparently there will be an obligation to make the switch permanent next summer, and the 24-year-old will then be expected to sign a long-term contract at Stamford Bridge. So he joins the likes of Pedro Neto, Joao Felix, Dewsbury Hall and Jorgensen as new arrivals. He of course spent the second half of last season on loan at Dortmund, making 21 appearances and scoring 3 goals. He's a name. He's definitely a name that people know, and I think there is obviously a lot of talent in there. I've referenced Joao Felix before. I reference him again. I think the Joao Felix comparison is quite an apt one. These were two players a couple of years ago that were deemed to be the big European talents. Obviously, their careers haven't really worked out in the way they want. So now they're looking to revive them. And given their ages are similar, there is still enough time within their career to reach some form of the potential that has been there for them. I guess the big question for Jadon Sancho is he arrives at a club, even with Raheem Sterling moving out, where there's a lot of names within this area. And I just don't see, again, the point of this deal in the sense of what do Chelsea fundamentally need in their squad. And when I look at what we've already bought, what we already have, what we're not letting go, the fear of clutter is absolutely there. Now, that doesn't mean that Sancho can't make any impact. That doesn't mean that Sancho isn't talented enough to do some positive things for Chelsea. I just can't really answer it clearly at the moment because so much has been done in that area. And when you factor in Esteval Willian, you've also got Kendry Paez coming. We've got Tyreek George who got minutes against Servette last night. You've got young players coming in. But you've also, of course, got Noni Madueke, Mykhailo Mudryk, Cole Palmer. There's a bundle of names in that area, and there's a point about having squad depth, but then there just becomes a point where bottlenecks will naturally occur, and that's always my concern of like clutter. And is that actually helping players' developments? Are you stalling developments that could actually be beneficial to you in the long term if you give that player time to marinate and get better? So Sancho is a name. We'll see what he does at Chelsea. I don't think this is a groundbreaking deal for Chelsea, and I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Does it move the needle? I'm not sure. Some other deals. Trevor Chalobah moving on loan to Crystal Palace. Really happy for Trev. I think he deserves to play first team football in the Premier League on a regular basis. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, that isn't at Chelsea. We can look at the Servette game again and go, Does that make any sense? I don't think it does, but he needs football, so he's got it now at Crystal Palace. And I mean, Mark Guehi and Trevor Chalobah, I mean, is that a better defence than what Chelsea can currently put out, or at least what they put out against Servette? I think that's another question to answer. But for him, I think it's a good move. I think it's also Raheem Sterling. I mean, Sterling, I kept on saying this, it's an unworkable situation for him to be in Chelsea's under-23s for the whole season. It just can't happen. For a name of his magnitude, it would be bad news for Enzo Maresca. So he's moved to Arsenal, or it looks like he's going to move to Arsenal at the time of recording. For him, I think it's a good move, and for them, it maybe gives them more depth when Saka, especially on the right side of attack, is pretty much expected to play every week. So he'll get minutes, I'm sure, from Mikel Arteta, and he gets to stay in London, and he adds another top 6 club to his resume. I think he's nearly played for all of them at this point. So, again, we've decided to move on players who, it's not that Sterling could never be sold. It's not like Sterling is a first choice player. It's not like Sterling has been amazing for Chelsea. But when you balance him up with, say, Mykhailo Mudryk, I mean, I'm kind of looking at that and going, does that make logical sense? I'm not entirely sure. So let's move on to kind of the bigger question, because I've got all of the transfers listed in front of me here in terms of the ins. So in terms of ins, we've signed Tosin Adarabioyo, Mark Guiu, Caleb Wiley, Renato Vega, Antomino, Penders, Kellerman, Jorgensen, Dewsbury Hall, Joao Felix, Pedro Neto. Moving out, Ian Matson, Conor Gallagher, Lewis Hall, Romelu Lukaku, Murray Hutchinson, Diego Moreira, Hakim Ziyech, Malang Sarr, Silva, Andrin. We could still see David Washington move to Strasbourg. We'll see if that deal goes through. And Armando Broja on loan to Ipswich. Those are late deals. Loans that definitely happened: Ugochukwu, Petrovic, Kepa, Gilchrist, Wiley, Humphrey, Slanina, Anselmino, Penders, and Beach. So there's obviously a lot of loans within there as well. I think the honest answer to me, I mean, if I'm giving this transfer window a rating and you add Sancho and maybe something absolutely wild, and sorry, I'm looking at my timeline just to make sure I don't see, and it's just been confirmed, Victor Osimhen will not join Chelsea. At least that's from Fabrice Hawkins. Chelsea apparently are still waiting for something to happen with Osimhen, but it doesn't look likely. So Osimhen doesn't happen. Sancho does happen. Is it a successful window? I don't think I could call it a successful window. I think Chelsea losing Conor Gallagher, I think, is a bad move, especially when you look at Dewsbury Hall coming in, who I don't think is a better midfielder than him. So I just think on objective reality, I just don't think you've improved in that area. To let Petrovic go when you've got Sanchez and Jorgensen, 2 goalkeepers who I don't think are significantly better than Georgia Petrovic. Again, don't think you've improved the squad. I think in some ways you've weakened it. Trevor Chalobah moving out. Yeah, sure, on his best day, Wesley Fofana, I think, can be a brilliant centre-back, but we haven't seen that, and he's had a lot of injury problems. Levi Colwill, sure, but again, I think needs to prove a lot this season. The rest of Chelsea's defence is not better than Trevor Chalobah for me, so no, you haven't improved the area there. In attack, Mark Guiu could turn out to be a great centre-forward, but he looks very raw, and you're kind of hoping that he picks up the pace quickly. I'm not saying there's nothing good about Mark Guiu, but have you upgraded what you have? I go back to what I felt back in June and May, even before Pochettino left, right? That I actually didn't think this summer was about Chelsea going out there and spending a load on new players. I actually felt because of the injury problems we've had, and that's a long-term issue, you couldn't really judge the full quality of Chelsea's squad. So I felt that just a summer of stabilisation, if we can call it that, and if that's even possible at a club like Chelsea, was kind of needed. That hasn't happened. That blew up very quickly when Pochettino left. We brought in Enzo Maresca. In some cases, we've targeted transfers based on a style of play. I think sometimes that has been a bit of a smokescreen, to be honest. I don't think that's the case with Conor Gallagher. I don't think that's the case with Trevor Chalobah. I don't think that's the case with Ian Matson, with you look on the list here, Petrovic too going out on loan. There are transfers that have been made. The excuse and the briefing has been style of play. I just don't buy that Conor Gallagher can't play in the system, but somehow Keenan Dewsbury Hall can. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't buy that Trevor Chalobah can't play in the system, but apparently Axel Disasi and Tosin Adarabioyo can. Again, it sort of feels like to me, we get back to what the transfer window is. Is it about skirting round financial regulations? Is it about trying to implement your kind of uni dissertation theory? And I've seen a lot of defence that you can't really have a go at Chelsea's ownership for not being kind of bold and brave and wanting to win stuff and being ambitious. And then it just gets listed, the transfers and how much money they've spent. Just spending a lot of money and some names that doesn't objectively make a successful transfer window. I think people, either people are naive to that, or they just, like to see flashy names and see flashy names being thrown in front of them, and such signings, and every new signing gets to the next signing and it justifies more and more business. Across the board, I can't sit here right now and say this has been a good window. I don't even think it's been an okay window. I think it's been a less than satisfactory window. And I think in a lot of cases, Chelsea have left themselves in a position where maybe, and we hope this isn't the case, but just where I sit right now, in 6 to 12 months, a lot of the business that have been done right now over this summer will not be looked back on fondly. And that's my concern, is that we haven't actually upgraded. We've let some very talented players walk out the door who I think could have done a lot of good for Maresca. And we've replaced them with players who are going to need a lot of seasoning, are going to need a lot to develop and get up to the required speed. And, there's a lot of pressure on those players. That's just a natural thing of being at Chelsea. And we've kind of cluttered the squad with more players that we already kind of had at a high level because they've had 12 months experience. A lot of the young players we bought for Pochettino last year have had those 12 months to go through. So then I thought, if we were going to sign anyone, it was to upgrade significantly. For some reason, gone in late on Victor Osimhen, but it seems again we've not been willing to part with wages. It's the striker situation has been a confusing one. It really has. We started the summer talking about John Duran from Aston Villa, Samu Amarodian. We talked about other strikers. We signed Mark Guiu, and then very late on in the window, or at least it's been briefed, we've been trying all window, but at least very late on, we started trying to go in for Victor Osimhen. We started trying to go in for Ivan Toney, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. It's like they kind of switched and turned which way they were going to go on the striker front, and to not buy a striker that you can say is significantly better. That is going to be thrown at them if our attack falters during the season. I'm not saying I'm not happy that Nicholas Jackson will be given a chance. I really like Nicholas Jackson. I think with time he could develop into something brilliant. I really do firmly believe that. But again, that's something, if that was kind of your ambition, that Chelsea would go out and sign in that area, and especially even if I believe in Jackson, right, and I think he's a good player that deserves more time. When you look at everything else we've spent, you again look at it and go, we spent 20 million here, 20 million there. We haven't actually spent tons this summer. I'd say Neto is the one that excites me the most out of the players that have come in. But then you add up all those fees and you think you could have just combined all of those, a load of players that may not make much of a difference, and actually bought a superior player. That's going to be the logic, and that's going to be the test for Chelsea's ownership and sporting directors this season. Has this strategy made Chelsea a better or worse squad? Have Chelsea stood still? Can they afford to stand still? Or is it more clutter for players we've brought in? Or can the clutter turn into something brilliant? So that's going to be the big question over the next season. It really is. So those are my thoughts. If I was giving a rating out of 10, I'm going to give it a 4. I don't think it's been a good window. I simply don't. And that's not just because Gallagher and Chalobah have walked out the door. I don't think the players we've brought in a lot of cases, are going to make that much of a difference. And I'm concerned that you buy Sancho, you buy Felix, you keep some of the wingers like Mudryk and Madueke. How are all these players going to fit into a coherent team? I'm not entirely sure. So there we go. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. And I will see you again very soon. All the best.